Okay, so I know this tutorial is gonna say upscaling made simple, and it's probably not gonna look too simple from what it looks like, but just bear with me. It might look a little complicated from the way I draw the stuff, but it actually is going to be simple to understand. That being said, we're talking about upscaling, we're gonna talk about some variance, and we're gonna do a little bit of the image to image thing. See some really interesting things that can happen because of it. So let's go. So yeah, let's rebuild this thing because it's my routine. It's just continuously rebuilding this thing that you've seen 1,000 times. And I am going to do some stuff utilizing like Flux as well. Not in this tutorial, but later, because I know maybe a lot more people want to see Flux than they want to see this stuff. It's still using the same things. It's really just more crap in the way when we use Flux. That's the reason why I'm not really using it, because it takes a lot more out of my system to use it, which, I'm trying to record at the same time, so blah 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 blah. You get the idea. But I'm still gonna show you that version of it too. But anyway, this one's, fair warning, this tutorial is probably gonna get a little bit messy. I'll try to keep it as clean as possible with the nodes, but there's gonna be a lot of different stuff going on. But I always start again with this straight up format. So let's do an animal. Let's do an animal with a hat, right? So let's go with a lizard wearing a safari hat. How about that? Yep. This time we're only going to do one image at a time because it's going to be a lot helpful for what we're going to try to achieve. So very fast, boom, we got a lizard wearing a safari hat, right? Okay. Now, this is at 512 by 512. To upscale this, you can do it this way, right? Where you can go out here and say, re-encode this image, and then take this thing, to connect your VAE over here, then go out to latent image, and then you'll see this thing is latent upscale, and then it's latent upscale by. I'm gonna choose latent upscale by. We're just gonna talk about that one because it's like the easiest, most straightforward one. But this method, though there's nothing wrong with doing this, you're adding an extra step with no real reason to add an extra step, other than the fact that you want to preview it from here. But taking the latent samples from here versus taking it from here is really no different, other than the fact that you added an extra step. So the real place you probably want to do this is back here, where you'd upscale by back here, right? It's pretty much the same thing. I can't necessarily demonstrate it that it's exactly the same thing without actually, maybe I probably could if I use the exact same number, seed number. So, because you're gonna have to run this to the K sampler again. So you know what? Let's just do this. This is gonna be a little bit crazy, just to prove a point, right? It'll be the same seed number, blah blah blah. This is gonna look really freaking crazy, I think. This is gonna be so excessive. But I just want to show that like this is the same thing, despite the fact that you're re-encoding it. It doesn't really change anything as long as the seed number is the same and all the other parameters are the same. So I think this is a little bit different right here in this area, maybe. I don't know. It might be my freaking eyes. But my point is this: by doing this, you're really just doing it this way. You're adding an extra step and making it look messy for no reason. So what I say is just literally don't do this. You can still have a preview of the image without doing all this. So basically, this thing decodes down here. This basically gives you what this thing spits out, and everything else is going to be a variant using the same samples from the latent image to create an upscale version. And the upscale is by like what, I think 50%. I guess it's 1.5. I think that's what that means. I'm not the best math person. And when it says nearest exact, it means I believe it has to do with the binary thing, where it's like, because all computer stuff is binary, so it has to be done by 2 in the power of 2, or not the power of 2. Yeah, I think it is the power of 2. Base 2, whatever. Any rate, I don't want to get into a math discussion, but that's basically what it means about that. You know, odd numbers are going to be odd, and it's, you know, we're just going to get nearest to that. It's the way we can make things happen. So technically this image has a higher resolution than this one does. However, you can see it's very different, right? We don't necessarily want that if we're just wanting to upscale, right? So to solve that issue, you can take this denoise down. Now this is still going to make pretty significant variance doing it this way, but you see how it starts to look like it again, right? Get the hat is actually on the head. It's a little pale though, right? So what we're going to do is let's take this all the way down. Take it down to like 0.55. Really, probably around like 50. Right? So now it's really starting to look like it again. You've got a larger, higher definition image, but it's looking more and more like it. So if you take this down even more, I would say by like 35, right? The denoise, take the denoise down, 35, boom, boom, boom. Now we start to have other issues with it. As you can see, like, it almost looks like digital artifacts. You see, it starts to screw with this thing. Turn it back up a little bit. Take it back up, you get more and more like it, but it still has some other issues here. I would say 48. So the real thing is, you can take it up higher. You can get it as high as even like, you know, I would say 52 or something like that, and maybe you'll still start to see a little bit of the original one. There are limitations in what you can do, and also it depends on the model as well. During this method, you can also take this up even higher, or you can, not 8. Definitely don't do 8. I'll show you why you don't want to do that. But it'll upscale it. But in order to do this, and see when you get to this level, you see it now. It just starts to get a little grainy and stuff. So it's not this thing where you can just put the highest number you want in this thing and get exactly what you need out of it. Some people don't even go as high as 1.5. Because, you know, there's all these other issues that start to occur as you can start to see. But for the most part, if you want it to look similar to the previous image, you want to stay around this range. Anywhere from, sometimes you can go as low as like, I think 35. I don't know if you can do it on this particular one, this particular image, but because without it looking all weird, the hat starts to look all funky and stuff like that, right? On certain ones you can go as high. If you start to get to like, oh shoot, didn't mean to do that. If you start to go around like 58, right, you'll start to see that now it starts to change up what the lizard looks like a little bit more. And see, on this particular one, the color's starting to go away. There's tricks you can do. You can actually even try to screw with the prompt too. Like, let's say like a lizard wearing a safari hat. Saturated colors. That might work. Maybe vivid is a better. Whoa, yeah, but I forgot that changes the first one too. I forgot about that. You can actually do this thing too if you wanted to. So like, let's say you didn't want to change the first one. Another method is you could create a whole nother set of prompts for this one. So this allows you, by doing it this way, it allows you to utilize the same reference image, because it's still utilizing this. Remember, your latent sample right here is coming from here, right? So you're still utilizing this, but you can also decide that you want a different text on it, right? So let's go back. Let's do this for a second, just to prove my point on this. So let's just run that, and then we'll do the same right here. Just put the same text here, so it shouldn't have that much of a difference on it, just because of that. Alright, so in this regard, we get the same type of thing. And actually the color looks better on this one. Just this iteration looks better. This is still fixed, so this is not going to change, but this one is going to change because I'm going to add that same reference we just did. Saturated colors. And give or take, it might have changed. Oh, but the real reason it didn't is because it's not, the noise is probably not high enough for it to make a significant difference. So kind of a, I don't know, a catch-22 type thing. But at any rate, I hope you can see the difference, that it started to change up a little bit. You can do stuff like that. You can create a totally different influence on this. Matter of fact, let's just say, talk like normal colloquial speech, shall we? Lizard wearing a blue safari hat, saturated colors. Now let's do it. Well, it ain't doing exactly what I want to do. We can try to do this. Safari hat, which is something I like to do. I think I've talked about this before, to try to get the blue to get on the hat instead of on the freaking lizard. And it's really not working that well. That's why I don't like trying to fix things in the prompts. But again, this another issue with this is the fact that we have the denoise is not high, probably enough to make a significant influence on it. The lizard scales inside of the thing, and if we do it too high, though, again, what happens is the lizard's position and everything will start to change. Yeah, now we start to get stuff like this. But again, this is a really cool thing you can do with like this whole variance thing, and you can stick with the same image as the reference point. That's probably actually a good reason why you would want to create a separate prompt, so that way when you mess with stuff here, you're not messing with the original one, and you can just still stick with that same base as a reference, right? So that's a cool thing about this. Or, you know what, you might not even have to say Safari with this thing. I was just thinking about that, like you might not have to even have to say it because it's already like shown already, so you don't have to do anything about it. Yeah, that works a lot better because you don't have to tell it that it's a Safari hat anymore because it's already been created, right? I think we were down to 65 before, and that looks like a cotton fedora. But yeah, you need enough like of influence on the thing for it to actually like start to show up, and that's kind of the issue with that. Let me take down the saturated colors part. Maybe that'll help. But yeah, you need enough influence on this end of it, which is the denoise part, to make that color shine through. And that's going to be like the tough part about doing it this way. Another topic we can talk about that solves this issue is called inpainting. But I'm not going to talk about it exactly right now because I think there's too many topics in one. But you can see this cool stuff you can do with it. I'll make it the next topic. The next topic we'll actually talk about inpainting. And I'll actually make it a continuation of this, utilizing this workflow as it is right now. I won't even like restart the whole workflow. But as you can see, like there's a lot of stuff you can do to create variance as well as upscale an image, utilizing this part of the image that you originally made versus using new text prompts. And of course, you're gonna have to re-sample it because it's not just about making it bigger, right? If you ever tried to make an image bigger in any type of, I don't know, Photoshop or something like that, right? You'll notice what happens is once you try to enlarge it, it gets pixelated, right? So what do you do with all those pixels? That's why the AI is important to this, because that's what the AI does. It fills in those gaps. That's why you need to resample it. So knowing what it's going to fill in those gaps with helps you generate an image at a higher scale. But it's, there's limitations to it. You can't upscale it too high without it getting looking, crazy or something. We go at 2, and then it's just like, nah, that's too much data that's missing that it's trying to add in. And it starts to do some weird stuff. This actually works out pretty good at 7.5. But again, the thing is, it starts to really modify what it looks like. We did upgrade it by 2. But even with it, the denoising at 7.5, if we do this at 3, the higher and higher you get, the further and further it's going to start to get away from you. It's going to take a longer amount of time too, because, it's more pixel depth. But realize that you have to consider how it's going to redraw it, so to speak. And see, now you're also going across the limitations of deliberate and what it can do. Now you get two freaking heads, right? And then it's muddled between what is hat and what is lizard. So there's other issues with, like, you can't just do it as always. You can't just upscale as much as you want without any type of like thought about, oh yeah, I can just keep upscaling the model. Because if you really could do that, honestly, you probably wouldn't need upscaling in the first place. You could probably just make the original file that same kind of way. If you take this down, I'm going to show you what happens when you take the denoising down, and then we keep the scale up by 2. We still managed for this image to actually pull out some stuff, and we can still kind of get back to what we originally were. Got some color saturation going on there as well, but I think most of that blue is just coming in from this thing right here, the blue hat thing, but it can't concentrate on the hat because, let's just say a hat, and we don't even need to say blue or safari hat. Yeah, the blue just comes in there because of that. But a lot of the things that you can do with this are really cool. There's one more thing, I'll just show it to you, which I think is a really cool thing to do. And this is links up to the next thing we're going to talk about anyways, which is, let's talk about when we load an image, right? So I was thinking about this because an image I was creating from another thing that actually has a lizard in it too. This is a different kind of way of thinking about variance. So this is 2 elves riding on a blue lizard, right? I could be more descriptive of that, but this was, I know, was done with flux. This was not. This was done with deliberate. But that doesn't mean you can't use a flux image, or any image for that matter, as a reference, right? So what sometimes I like to do is this. So it's the same thing as pulling, when we were going to do that decode thing right before, the first way we showed, we just do this, we just re-encode it, and now we can pull it out as a latent image. We're still going to use this as a reference, right? And instead of using the upscaled version of this image as a reference, we're going to use this as a reference. Now, what I like to do a lot of times with this, just because I can, and we're just going to do this right here. Well, we don't have to bypass it really, because it doesn't really do much of anything. It's just going to show some error code somewhere. I can't remember exactly where it probably would show. But instead of actually like doing this thing where I figure out what it's going to output from this as a reference, I just let it run and just see what crazy thing comes out of it. Boom. So this happened, right? So it used this as a reference image, and then it created this thing based upon the text that was related to it as well. So it still tries to put the hats on their head, blah blah blah. If you want to, right, you can try to like emulate what this is. I know I had something that actually can like read an image, and it's kind of like a chat GPT thing where it reads the image and then gives you a prompt for it. So let's just try to describe it. So remember, we're doing this via deliberate. This is not flux, so it's not going to understand it exactly the same way. But 2 young riding a, yeah, let's just go with that. And I know it's not going to be safe. It's probably not even going to get the pinking. Can we do that? Let's see if we, 2 young elves. Do this. 1 blonde. One blonde, 1 pink hair. Elves riding a blue lizard. Bah, 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 bah. Okay, boom. Oh, in the desert. I should have said in the desert. Okay, so it got something right here, right? So let's do it one more time, even though it kept the desert there. Now, again, the problem with this is going to be, and you know, it's showed more of desert now, but everything else kind of remained the same, right? Let's just do this. Let's take this part off. Take the number stuff, and let's just see if it does that. Boom, now it comes back a little bit more. It might be the numbers are screwed up, but you still get this weird lizard thing going on here. Let's do this. Blonde, pink hair. Oh, let me do this. Let's put this back here. That might be the problem too. It's a weird freaking sentence I created. Boom, right? Legs a little bit weird, a little bit funky, but it kind of created what we were created here. Just a bit different. The cool thing about this to me, and this is at denoise of 0.56. The cool thing about this is it allows you to upscale in a way that you normally probably couldn't do if you just stick with deliberate, because it adheres to that reference image. It's kind of the same thing as another thing we can talk about later, which is this idea of control net thing, where you're controlling what is what. As long as it can truly identify what's what in the image, you can get better control of what it's doing. Turn this down, right? If you look at this flux image that I created too, you'll notice something about it. That I deliberately kept it like really low on the amount of like steps and the clarity of it on purpose. And this, you can utilize that, I don't know what the hell happened right here, to use another model to try to freshen it up, I could just say, and make it even nicer. This is what I really like about this. I'm gonna save this image really quick. I like this one, and I'm saving it for a purpose actually. So again, the purpose of this is to try to figure out how we can take the things we're doing here and create a new set of like upscaling and new set of ideas and concepts from it by utilizing another image as an input. So what I'm gonna do is the images I just saved, instead of using this image like I just did as a reference, I'm gonna use those images. Now it's basing it off of one, well, not both of them, just one, of higher definition. So now it can add on top of that one whatever you're doing with this one. So this is a different way of upscaling, or at least what I call like adding definition, adding a variation to it using a totally different model. Because remember, the original image was done with flux, and this is, we're putting on top of it deliberate. I think this is a really cool thing to do, and it allows you to experiment with different types of looks. This is a really cool thing to me. That's a part of creating variation and creating, again, you see a higher resolution. Without, this is not technically upscaling because it's the same size, but you could upscale this too. You could use this as a reference image to upscale to the next thing. So there's all types of tricks and cool things you can do with upscaling and the concepts behind upscaling. And I hope this was informative on that. I might have did a lot, maybe a little bit too much, but I just wanted to really show that upscaling is not just simply this idea of, oh, let's make the image bigger. It's more to it than that. And because it's more to it than that, that's what makes it more intriguing to start to do it. And why you should utilize it as much as possible, whatever you're trying to do. Because even when I create like a really nice image, sometimes it just doesn't have the right definition, or sometimes there's errors, like the fingers don't come out right, or the hands don't come out right, or something like that. And like here, like see, this didn't come out too crispy. But if I was to convert, let's say from deliberate, take this image and then take this back in and use it as a reference for flux, who knows, right? You could take a whole lot of the images that you did before and do that same type of thing. That's the cool thing about doing this as a upscale. Again, I call it variance sometimes. Upscale variance to create new imagery. I hope that was informative. I hope I didn't lose people at all this monotony I created here. But if you have any questions, please say so in the comments. If there's anything you want me to talk about more like in depth or something like that, I really want to hear about it, because I really want to know what you guys want to see. And thanks for watching. You know, do all that stuff they say to do at the end of the video. If you could, please. It does help me out a lot. See you next time.